afternoon. The next session is about, as I mentioned, skills and data. We start with skills, and in about 45 minutes we switch to data. And welcome on stage, Laura, from Energy Impact. Thanks.
Hello. Oh, wow. So great to see you all here today. I feel very loud standing here. I hope you've enjoyed your lunch. You've met some new people. Yeah, we've got a great session lined up this afternoon on data and skills that are needed for the sustainable implementation of humanitarian projects. I see we got the big room, which is very promising. This is obviously something people are interested in. And just before I call up our first speakers, just to set the scene, you know, it's often said that the humanitarian sector may lack energy expertise. Sometimes projects are implemented by non-energy experts. And on the other hand, we have stakeholders out there. We have stakeholders in this room that are experts in energy, in the private sector, in academia, also in the development sector. And we shouldn't forget the displaced people themselves, who hold a lot of knowledge. They're experts in their own situation. So it's about how can we bring all of this expertise together, both in energy, humanitarian response, the local context. How do we bring this together to start to implement sustainable projects for communities, businesses, and institutions? And without reliable data, it's often difficult to know where to start. You know, what are the types of products and services that are needed? What's suitable? What's affordable? And I have to say that, you know, data collection in itself is a skill, you know, that's needed in the sector. So this afternoon we're privileged to have a number of speakers who we're going to hear from, who are going to share some of their experience in the sector, collecting data, building expertise within the humanitarian sector. And we'll hear from them, and then you'll have opportunity to also hear from the audience. To start, I'd like to invite our first speakers to join me on the stage. We have Anne, who's going to join us, and also Renisha. But our first speaker today is actually joining us online, Lama Gabrahe from NRC. Do we have Lama online with us? Will Lama join, or would you like us to move to the next presenter? We'll move on. Okay, great. In that case, we'll start with Anise, who is a junior energy expert with IOM, and she's gonna talk about some of her work with them. Over to you.
Thank you so much. I don't know if I can have some slides to support my presentation. If not, I can start. Yes. So my name is Anaïs Maté-Junot. I'm a junior energy expert from NORCAP, and I've been deployed to IOM since September 2020. And together with my colleague Adam, we have developed from the start of our mission a DTM energy module, and I'm going to tell you a bit more what it is today. So DTM stands for Displacement Tracking Matrix, and it's a system implemented by IOM to track monitoring and all the flow of migration that is happening, as well as the needs of the people on the move. DTM is present in over 80, I think now active in 84 countries, and has different components. The first one that we are going to focus on today, and where we saw that energy was important, was in the mobility tracking, which is really focusing on the multi-sectoral needs of the people, and that's what we call MSLA, multi-sectoral location assessments. So these types of assessments are made at the location level using key informant interviews and observations. Next slide, please. So we call it a module because it has different components. The first one is the Energy Field Companion, which basically is a repository of standardized questions and answers that DTM teams around the world can use to include in their assessments different sectoral issues. And in our case, we try to align these standardized questions. We have 26 of them in this repository. We try to align with the SMAP multi-tier framework as well as the GPA key indicators. And you can see on the screen, we had developed the module to include 4 different categories. First one being cooking, both about the fuel and the stove used, the electricity, the lighting aspect, not only the electrical lighting, but also other sources of energy, basic connectivity, space heating and cooling, and then we have the wash category, where we look at how water is provided and how is the energy used to move this water and provide to the displaced. And the last one is a general category where we look at the main priorities from the displaced in terms of energy services, as well as their perceived barriers to access these services. So DTM works like this. They're decentralized, but they basically pick up the questions that they think are relevant to the context and what is also relevant to the local partners, meaning the working groups, the clusters, and the other partner organizations. We also have external materials that have been developed that are available online. I encourage you to look up. We have an FAQ that really shows what this module is about, and also some training materials for the enumerators and our staff. Next slide, please. So we piloted this module in 4 different countries. The first one was Mozambique last year. In the north, we assessed 26 locations, included about 13 energy indicators, and it covered 90,000 IDPs in the north, internally displaced people. Then we focused in Nigeria, where we had a large data collection. You can see the numbers. It's about 3 million IDPs that have been captured in over 4,000, I think, locations. So we really have tried to make it really accessible and provide the data for the partners and also to inform IOM's operation. Both reports can be found online. Next slide, please. Yes, and I wanted to highlight something about Mozambique. In their multi-sectoral location assessments report, energy is now like the other sectors, like wash, like shelter, like food security, assessed and compared in terms of the needs and the priorities. So this is really new, and this is something we're really happy to see, and seeing energy as a sector focus. We also use this data, so not only for the general public, internally at IOM, we used it to select some sites in order to implement our newly funded project by Innovation Norway. In the Solfala province. So it's not only used for the sake of data collection, but it's really useful for us. And the last part that is also interesting is that DTM is not only doing key informant interviews, they can also leverage their expertise and their trainings to do household level surveys. So we really try to leverage the capacity there. Next slide, please. So then we have the 2 other pilot countries, South Sudan and Niger. We're about to publish a report for South Sudan. You can see the numbers again, 2,600 locations, about 1.7 million IDPs captured in these locations and their needs regarding energy, 90 indicators, same for Niger, a bit smaller scale and regions there, but we're looking forward to publish this data and make it available for the wider community. Next slide, please. And yeah, I wanted to share a few things with you as takeaways. So I said before, we did five pilot countries, more than 6,600 locations, about 4.7 million IDPs captured in this location and their needs related to energy. And I think we tried to show that IOM and DTM through the system has the capacity to serve this data and to make also a role in capturing a baseline for SDG 7 in displacement settings, especially also we focused on internally displaced populations, which are sometimes forgotten compared to the refugees. And the learnings, DTM has capacity to serve, through the wider network of enumerators, through good training. They can do different types of assessments. And maybe what we learned is that the analysis of this data requires resources, time, expertise. So that's maybe what we need to build in the future, because it requires time and we need this type of expertise in the sector. For the future, data quality and consistency is key. We want to provide good data, so we will try to improve, the training and also the way we disseminate the data. So currently, it's available on the DTM website and also some other platforms that share, data that are published, like the Relief Web. But we're also trying to see if we can simplify and use a notification system so that the whole sector can know when new data are available by country or by region. And the last part is about these data are out there. We encourage the whole sector to use it and also to provide us with feedback. If this is not the type of data we're looking into, then we should know it and we should continue to develop this module. It's always a learning. So thank you so much. The next slide is the email address in case you have more questions to us. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you, Anis. Just before we move on, we've heard about some of the pilot projects you've been doing. I wanted to ask, what are the next steps for this to be rolled out in other countries, and what would that take in terms of capacity and resources?
Thank you. This is a good question. We talk about pilots, right? We want to roll that a bit wider. So there are some discussions. Some countries have been interested. Some missions have been interested to include this new module in their, type of assessment, the multi-sectoral location assessments. We have Cameroon who was interested. And also in the countries that we have data, they will continue to provide and include that in the next assessment. So we will have updated data normally. That's the good part. And in Ukraine, we're also in discussion to see if at some point, thanks to the DTM being in place there, we could have information on the needs of the people that are displaced in Ukraine. So we're looking forward to the next steps, and hopefully we will have more data. And it should also come from an expressed needs from our partners and from the sector to get this type of data. So thank you.
Is it working? Yes? Yes. Okay, thank you so much, Anis. Do we have Lama online? No. Okay. Okay, no problem. Okay, great. In that case, we'll move to Renisha. We're hearing about all this data being generated, all this great work that's going on, and I think it would be great to hear, what are some of the tools and platforms that can be used to collate and share some of this work that's coming out. So I will hand it over to Renisha.
Thank you. Maybe I'll use that microphone. It's more comfortable. Thank you. So good afternoon, everyone. Hope everyone had a good lunch and is really happy and satisfied. So as you all know, the humanitarian energy sector is growing, and one of the biggest testimonial is this conference. We have so many new faces, old faces, everybody willing to learn. And as any sector grows, one of the key for moving the sector forward would be knowledge exchange, capacity building, really to learn what has been done in the sector, and if what was the success stories, what was the failure stories, if something worked, why did it work, if it failed, why did it fail? And that's what brought us to the collaboration between Energypedia and GPA, UNITA, where we really sat down and we said, okay, we need to work towards capacity building and promoting knowledge exchange within the sector, because we really want to shed light on what has been happening in the sector, really give a voice to the sector. And that's how we started our collaboration in 2019. And we kicked off with an amazing webinar series called Humanitarian Energy Webinar Series, which I'm pretty sure most of you are familiar with. And we also have it online with the QR code. Actually, I put a pamphlet with a QR code on each desk, but I know the internet is not working. But when you go back home, just tap Energypedia, Humanitarian Energy, you'll get all the resources. But coming back to the webinar series, so we really started in 2019 with a webinar series focusing really on who are the stakeholders, what are the case studies, what are the projects that has worked, and it ranged from all kind of technology uses to case studies to project development, everything. And until date, we did more than 20 plus webinar series. And that has been possible because of our donors like ICRC and GIZ, who are also today present in the room. So thank you to our donors. One of the outcomes of the webinars where we had so much of resources that we collected and so much of learnings, we thought, okay, there is a need to share this. And also so much was happening in the sector. And we were clear in our approach that we do not want to replicate anything that has been done, but we want to complement what has been done. So that's when the idea of the Humanitarian Energy Hub was born. Basically, a one-page or one-stop where we would link up all the resources that has been done, like, for example, the DTM, everything that has been done, the other webinars. So basically, the whole idea was to complement what is happening and bring it all together. And that's where the Humanitarian Energy, the portal was born. And in addition, we are also doing other knowledge sharing tools. So one of them, the tool that we are working on is a private sector stakeholder database, which is basically a catalog of private companies who are working in the humanitarian sector or who wish to enter into the humanitarian sector. And everything that I'm presenting today is in a beta stage. And the reason we are sharing it today is also because we want you, the community, to get involved and really have a look at it and tell us, hey, this doesn't work, maybe you should think about this. So we are really open to that feedback. And that's why we are sharing it already at the beta version, because we really want to get you involved. And then the other tool that we also worked on is, I think in the last 2 and 3 years, we all have taken part at least in 10 webinars. So now if I go home and if I want to look at the webinar that I took part, maybe it will be difficult to find it. And that was the same with us. We did 25 plus. We needed a way to make it easily sortable, easily findable. That's when we developed a video library, and the idea was basically just to put all of these resources in a way that is easy to sort. Okay, I'm interested in cooking energy in humanitarian context. Can I just sort it through? That's how the video library was born. So these are some of the tools that we are presenting today. And as said, they all are in beta version because we want to kind of develop it together with the community. And our key goal with all of this tool is to really foster discussions among the different stakeholders. So these are designed for you guys, and we want you guys to use it, and we want you to give us your feedback. So with that, I think I'll end it here and really welcome everyone to have a look at those tools. And please feel free to reach out to me for any question, comments, everything is welcome. Thank you. And back to you, Laura.
Thank you. Thank you, Anisha. And yeah, as someone who gets involved in project planning, energy assessments, I can testify, Energypedia is often, you always find yourself there, and it's a great place to start to understand what's out there. And just before we open it to discussion, maybe I can ask you if you could just share again, how partners, donors, companies, how can they get involved in Energypedia and in some of these knowledge sharing activities?
Thank you so much. So everyone who wants to get involved, for example, with the hub, if you have any resources that you'd like to showcase, whether it's a study, whether it's a report, or there's a link to your website where you have all the resources, send them to us. We are happy to take. With the private sector, we welcome you to enter your private sector information in the database, because this is going to be shared with all the humanitarian energy actors, so it's also a great way to showcase your work. With the video library, I'm pretty sure everyone in this team has done at least one webinar, so you can send us all of those. We'll put them and make it easy for others to find it. So really, there are different ways to get involved. And if you want to work with us to expand with us, GPA together, to expand the webinar series, then also reach out. Or if you have any new ideas where you think it will complement, then also reach out. So basically, the motto is you can reach out for anything. We are here to listen. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So I think we'll go to questions. Yeah. So yeah, I'm hoping there's someone who's going to run around with a microphone for me. But yeah, I think we'll take maybe 2 questions and then we can go back to the panelists. And I can see hands up already. We have some at this table if there's a mic around. We have one over here. Or if there's no mic, you can stand up and... Okay, there's mics on the table. Yeah, do you... This table here, would you like to go ahead?
Yes, hi, my name is Amr Al-Kayed. I am I thought I'm loud enough. I'm not sure for the environment. Oh, sorry. Yeah, not used to it. Hi, my name is Amr Al-Kayed. I'm a Palestinian refugee, and here today I'm representing the global refugee-led network. I just wonder, how much is the refugee or refugee-led organizations' involvement in the during the planning? Since the morning, we hear all nice things, beautiful projects, great achievements, but in real life, I visit the camps myself, and I see that still our women and kids, children, they are still facing violence due to not having access to energy. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll take one more and then we'll take it back to our panelists. Would you like to go ahead?
Hello. Thank you, everyone, for this interesting discussion in the panel and showcasing the importance of data and skills management within our organizations to reduce duplication of work, because we noticed, and we've been talking for the past 2 days about duplicating work because data is not shared enough. My question is to Ranisha. So I've been using Expedia for Energypedia, for a quite long time since it started. I'm a deployee from NORCAP, and I'm also a student, referencing you guys in a lot of my work. I've noticed that you have lots of interesting tools. You include research a lot. So I was wondering, including academia, it was not done so long ago within the humanitarian sector. So what are your plans to include academia and researches that has been done since the past 20 years and so on renewable energy and sustainability within your platform? Thank you.
Thank you. Over to our speakers. So we had a question on how to get refugee-led organizations involved in planning, and one on including academia and knowledge sharing.
Do you want to take that, or should we? Okay. Yeah, and then I take the second. Both of them.
Yes, thank you so much for the question. So about the inclusion of the displaced in the planning, I think there are different ways of doing that, and at least at IOM we're really trying to promote inclusive and participatory approaches. In one of the projects I mentioned in Mozambique, we're really taking this step of including them early on, so not just assessing and just collecting data about the needs, but really including them in the early discussions. We organize focus group discussions to get a bit more the perception, their aspirations. We used a bit more of an interactive way for them to tell us what they would really need and their priorities. And then a bit later in the stage of this project, we're going to organize a market dialogue, but it doesn't mean only talking to the private sector, as we heard a lot is important today, but also to involve all of the other stakeholders, the non-governmental organizations, the local parties, local groups. So I think this is key, and we're hearing that also from for the success stories are usually because we've been involving all the stakeholders, including the refugee-led groups that you mentioned, and we're really, it's a priority and we are making sure of that. But I think this is a good point, and we're trying to do our best in our next endeavors. So, yeah.
Thank you. And with us, when we were doing the webinar series, we have tried our level best to make everyone included, whether it's the refugee-led, private sector, everyone. And if you go back and look at some of our webinars, we did have someone also from the host community, refugee community coming up and presenting on the experience. So we have tried as much as possible within our reach, but we do know that we should do more. I totally acknowledge that. And then to come up to your questions of how to include all the research that has been done till date. Energypedia as such, we are a non-profit where we facilitate the platform, but all the information has usually come from the users or the community, the energy experts community who work around it. And what we do is we work with the range of expert community. So as such, we are always trying to, talk to new communities or try to bring people on board and then say, hey, you should share this because this is going to benefit the other people. But actively just going up and looking up, that's something we do not have the capacity, because at the end of the day, we are a non-profit. So everyone has a non-profit story where they are very much driven by like limited resources, having to achieve a lot. So you could be a voice for us and really share it with your community, and we'd welcome anything. If your networks, your peers would like to share, we'd also welcome that. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll open up to some more questions from the room. We have a question over here. Peter, go ahead.
My name is Peter Laskowski. I am from ICRC. I just have one comment. I participated on a webinar from Mozambique where was presented pumping solar software, which was very, very useful. I spread it among our colleagues, and it was used, and we have very positive comments because it's for simple user from the field. Well done.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's great to get positive feedback. Any more questions? We have a hand over here.
Hello everyone. My name is Simran Katao. I work with WFP at the Regional Bureau in Nairobi. And okay, so what I'm understanding is that numbers don't lie. So it's really encouraging to see data being collected and shared. Really important, again, also for duplication. I think my question to speakers is, where do gendered, cultural, and like larger qualitative data fit into your assessment, right? Because considering that qualitative data is one of the most important sources of understanding like context-specific information, where does that fall into your analysis? Because energy is a cultural thing. Energy is a gendered thing. So I'd like to know more about that. Over.
Okay, thank you so much for the question. I think it's a very relevant question also to the sector on the type of assessments and what we mean by data, because asking for more data is, in the end, we need to know what we want to discover in getting more information. DTM, the work I presented is really about this location level. So we're not going to the household level asking about these in-depth questions as if you were to start your design or even the scoping of your project. What we're trying here to do with DTM is to get this level of data that we can say in this site there is this level of access based on key indicators that are been vetted by the GPA as well as part of the core indicators. So we need these different type of assessments, and I guess the cultural aspect really gets more when we can zoom in, and when you're really looking to understand what would work, what are the options, what are the practices, what are the preferences, and it is important for everything linked to program design, project design. So I think we need different types of data. What we propose here is maybe more having a level of like the baseline, what's happening, are we tracking what's the changes also over time linked to the displacement of these populations. So yeah, very much acknowledge the fact that this is an important thing, and it's maybe more when you zoom in. And yeah, just another note on this, in the DTM module we have questions about practices linked to how do people collect their fuel, and also we try to ask about like their priorities and the barriers to access. So in that case we can try to connect, like we can try to capture this type of things, but it's very high level because it's reliant on key informant interviews. So we're very also not we know the level of data and granularity we can achieve, and we would not go beyond that. So Vanisha, please.
Sure. We as NGP as such, we do not collect quantitative data. As I said, we are very much community driven, but I do encourage you to have a look at not only the Humanitarian Energy Portal, the information hub, but in addition, we have a lot of different hubs for different types of energy technologies like cooking, the solar home system, and there really the community has contributed so much of information that is on gender, on culture, especially with cooking because it's such a cultural context. So there I can proudly say that you'll find a lot of information. And also on the topic of gender, we have been trying to collect as much of information as possible in the last year or so. So also shout out to any donors or funders who are in the room. So if you'd like to fund us to develop a gender portal, please do reach out to us because we have been collecting information, but due to limited resources, we haven't launched a portal or hub as such. Thank you.
Okay, great. Do we have time for more questions?
I think we should go to the other round.
Okay, great. So yeah, in that case, I would just like to say once again, thank you to our speakers. Thank you for the great questions. Let's give them a round of applause and we'll move on to the second half.
Allow me to add one. Is it working? Yeah. Allow me to add one point on especially Energypedia. When we developed the GPA back in 2018, we obviously also thought about what do we do with our website. And if you go to our website, it's very lean. There's almost, I'm not saying nothing on it, but there is very little content on it because from the outset we thought, let's go to a platform, Energypedia, which is already present, which is already so much information. I encourage everyone who is trying to set up new projects or similar structures, use Energypedia. It's very easy to work with, very agile. It's a great pleasure. And just to complement what else we are doing in terms of skills in the GPA, we have sort of 3-4 levels. The very first level is sort of basic information, our website on Energypedia. Then we have these webinar series together with Energypedia and ICRC. Then we have the Energy Delivery Model project, which is also something that Amy developed together with partners from WFP, which is essentially an online training, has an online training component as well as a project development component. So if you are interested in developing your own energy projects, that might be an opportunity to use the EDM model. And it's probably not a secret, we're also developing with a university in the UK a master program on humanitarian energy. So stay tuned, not this year, not next year, but we will hopefully kick this off in 2024. Back to you, Laura.
Okay, thank you, Thomas. Yeah, we're going to move on to the second part, which we're going to focus on integrating sustainable delivery models into project design. So I'd like to invite our next two speakers to join me on the stage. So we have Maria Ten Palomares. She's a senior energy consultant from Trama Techno Ambiental. And we have Peter Lukowski, who's the North Africa Middle East Regional Advisor for ICRC. And we have Britt Christians, who should be joining us online from ICRC as well. Okay, so so first we'll go to Maria, who's going to tell us about some of the work she's been doing.
Hello everyone, thank you very much. Laura, can we put my slides, please? Yeah. Well, in the meantime, today what I'm going to do is I'm going to present the key findings of a World Bank funded project under the Sahel Alliance that we developed with our colleagues from Practical Action, who are here also in the room. Charlie, I have to mention you, don't hide. And yes, thank you very much. And this is about, it's a project which is called Energy Access for Host Communities, for FDP, forcibly displaced population, in the Sahel and the Lake Chad Basin regions. And it's a project that we have been developing in 7 different countries, which is Chad, Nigeria, Niger, Cameroon, Burkina Faso, Mali, and Mauritania. Next slide, please. Well, before starting a bit with the key findings of the project, I would like to share with you a bit of context, because I think it's very important to understand a bit of context before telling you a bit the approach that we used. So, as some of you may know, and I think in the Energy Forum, they are going to talk also about the Sahel context. You know, since quite several years already, there has been a rise in insecurity. This, together with the climate change effect, have been forcibly displaced more than 3.5 million people in the region. And this means across borders and within the same countries. And I would like to highlight this because, as I think it was Anais in the panel before who mentioned it, IDP, internal displaced populations, are sometimes forgotten. Forgotten. In between French, English, and Spanish, sometimes I do a mix, so just forgot. Voilà. So in this project, this is very important to acknowledge them, and we will see why. So this, in parallel with very low electrification rates within the region, which are really, really low if we compare to the global sub-Saharan electricity rates, we see there is a huge amount of people which the energy access situation, it's very vulnerable. Voilà. So that's why within this project it was meant to try to integrate, to engage the private sector in order to provide energy access, but also at the same time while dealing with this complex humanitarian emergency context that the region is facing right now. Next slide, please. Voilà. So the project have different objectives. The main objective, so I'm not going to go very deep into it, but just to share it with you, is just to have some sort of an overview, an assessment of to understand the demand and supply, the energy demand and supply, to understand the market situation, the market barriers and the different market stakeholders, and then in order to develop energy interventions and the sustainability models together with the delivery mechanisms required to make them sustainable and to make them commercially viable, if possible. We will see that sometimes it's not so possible, but that was the idea. So the project had 5 main steps that you can see here in the screen. So the first step was to have, let's have a big overview of the energy access situation. What are the energy needs of different populations in the different settings, and what are the different energy aspirations? And for doing this, we did quantitative and qualitative data analysis. So we did, of course, a huge literature review, but also we did more than, there is a mistake here because I'm sharing the results of the 2 projects in the PowerPoint, but we did more than 5,000 interviews to households, businesses, and institutions across all the region. And this we combine it with geographical data. So then in a second stage, we could do a least cost of electrification analysis to see, what is the best technology option able to electrify this forcibly displaced population and their host communities. And this, among the technology solutions, when I said technology solutions, we are talking about grid extension, standalone solar systems, and mini-grids. Then, in a third step, we did market characterization. With the results of the least cost of electrification analysis, we can say, what is the market size, what are the market barriers, and what are the market stakeholders? And finally, the further step, some sort of the final step, it's the implementation. Now that we have all this overview, what are the sustainability models, the business models, and the delivery mechanisms that we are going to propose in order to make these interventions work? Next slide, please. So here, in this presentation, I'm only going to focus on step 1 and 4. Of course, it's, as you could imagine, 7 countries, a huge project, so if you want to know a bit more, just come back to me or to our colleagues from Practical Action, and we will share a bit more results. Next slide, please. So for the sake of this panel, which is data collection skills, what was our methodology? And I think this is very important to share. We try to collect and analyze the data in 4 levels. The first level is end user category. So we are talking about households, but also businesses and institutions. We also separate it or try to have a lens whether we are talking about host communities, refugees, or IDPs. So because IDPs and refugees, depending on the context and the countries, they can have different status and different needs. Then we add another level, which is the setting, what we call it. It's rural, urban setting, or a camp, because again, depending on the setting, the energy needs, aspirations, and requirements can be different. And then we added another level, which is a transversal level, and I think some of you were mentioning, which is data disaggregation by sex, because we wanted to know how gender intersects and overlaps with displacement. So in order to do this, we wanted to identify what are the similarities, the difference, and relationships among all these levels, no? And based on that, we build up the different energy profiles that finally we use them in the least cost of electrification analysis. Next slide, please. So what did we find? We find out a lot of things. Here I just want to highlight 2 or 3 things. The first thing is that, and that's why I was saying this at the beginning, is that we found out that in almost all the countries and contexts, IDPs, internal displaced populations, are the most vulnerable when we talk about energy access, especially if they are in urban settings. Why? Because they are usually left behind from humanitarian actors, from humanitarian aid. And in the Sahel region, especially where we were, where there is the conflict right now, humanitarian aid is one of the, is the essential means of livelihood for forcibly displaced populations. So IDP, they don't have this status, and they are not recognized by anyone. So that means that they are one of the most vulnerable populations. Then, of course, it depends on the context. For example, in Niger, in IDPs which are in the refugee camp or in the camp of Sabian Forage, they have better conditions. Why? Because they are granted access to land. But in other places, like Burkina Faso, for example, or Chad, this is not the case. So this is a thing that we need to take into consideration when building up the energy profile, and of course, when designing the project or the energy interventions. This is one of the things, and the other thing that I wanted to highlight here, that it's not in the slide, but based on the conversation that we were having before, is that when we integrated this gender lens, we saw also that is a component that is sometimes left behind by energy actors. Maybe in cooking not so much, but the ones that work more in electricity, which is gender-based violence. We really saw that is a huge component linked to energy that is causing gender-based violence, and making women and girls much more vulnerable. Next slide, please. So once we had these energy profiles built, we said, okay, let's see what are the barriers for private sector participation if we want to implement these energy interventions. So we looked at three elements, of course: demand side, supply side, and the enabling environment. Some of the colleagues that have been presenting here, they mentioned some of the barriers that we saw. One of them, of course, is the limited ability to pay. As I was saying before, I mean, the forcibly displaced populations living in conflict-affected areas, they really rely on humanitarian aid, and when they don't have this, it's very difficult for them to have sustainable incomes. Let's put it like this. Then we have the gender gap. Then in the supply side, we have also, there is, in the places where we work in, we see that humanitarian actors are the ones also providing for free, if we call it like this, for example, standalone solar systems. So how this, if other private actors want to enter there, how is this going to interfere or not, for example? And of course, the enabling environment, which is very important, is how forcibly displaced populations and host communities, but especially IDPs and refugees, what are the rights that they have depending on the context? Are they informal camps? Are they recognized by the government, by the local authorities, yes or no? Are they stigmatized because of other things, especially, for example, in the region of Nigeria right now? So all this, we try to integrate all this data when defining the business model. And we saw that it's really, really important to take these three aspects into consideration and try to really see the difference across settings and across end user types. Next slide, please. So with all this, what we did is to say, okay, let's propose some different business models if we would like to implement these energy interventions. We did it for the technology solutions that I mentioned before. I'm not going to go into the details here. I just put here an example of the mini grids. It's one of the technology solutions that has been discussed this morning. So there, what we said is, okay, we saw that security it plays a key role. So we divided, for example, in between, when we were defining the business models, we divided between camps in high-risk areas and rural settings. Why? Because rural settings normally in the Sahel are much more prone to violence, and camps in low-risk areas and urban settings. So depending on this, where they were, we proposed two different models. For the first one, the PP-ESCO model, where the government has control of the assets and can, it suppose, a lower risk for the private sector, but still we can integrate collective energy services like education and health, for example. And for camps in low-risk area, we propose PPP models, where it enables a higher private sector participation and ensures a higher financial viability. That being said, this cannot be done with specific delivery mechanisms. Like some of them, they have been mentioned already by some of my colleagues before, like the risking mechanism is very important, subsidies, CAPEX and OPEX subsidies, supply and demand subsidies, etc., etc. And I go to the next slide because I think my time is running. Voilà, so just to finalize here, I know that it's a lot of information, it's very general, but I think one of the main key messages that we wanted to share with you is that the region is really experiencing a huge emergency in terms of displacement. So, I mean, the numbers have risen a lot during the last 3 years, and the perspectives are not very encouraging, let's put it like this. So, the insecurity context is also getting much more complex. So that means that we need innovative energy business models, delivery mechanisms, and implementation strategies. But for what? For really ensure the protection of forcibly displaced populations. I think it was Andrew, one colleague who was speaking this morning, who mentioned protection. And I think here in Sahel and Lake Chad Basin is where we see how energy really can enable protection of forcibly displaced populations. So that's all. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you, Maria. There's a lot of information and work you've been doing there. It's great to hear about some of that. Yeah, and to move on to our next speaker, we have Peter from ICRC. He's the North Africa Middle East Regional Energy Advisor, and he's going to tell us a bit more about the knowledge hub they're setting up.
We are going to use the presentation also from Rick.
Okay. Can we have the Brits presentation up as well?
Good morning, everyone. I would like to bring some valuable examples about the ICRC approach towards the energy. Maybe on the beginning I will mention that ICRC is a little bit different humanitarian organization. Our focus is on health facilities, on the providing energy, power and water to urban areas, communities and similar projects, including even prisons, because we are working as per international humanitarian law. Next slide, please. What is there? Traditionally, ICRC conducted training for the engineers for implementation of the humanitarian projects in Denmark, in Tadium, and it was very general. 2 years ago, there was activity from ICRC headquarters. We received the guidance with the energy transition program, and it was decided to create a regional hub which will be focused on the regional aspect of the implementation of the energy into humanitarian projects. So it will be one hub is already created in Nairobi and is focusing on the Africa region, and the second hub is created or under creation in Dubai, and it will be on the Near and Middle East region focus. There is a strategical partnership with the two partners, Grundfos company and Schneider company, which are global companies, and they are major provider of related equipment. And in Nairobi there is a Strathmore University with the other interlocutors, and in Dubai is Sharjah University with the other related partners. So I would like to suggest that this is not only exclusively for ICRC purposes. It is open for all humanitarian partners, and from the energy it will be later focused also on water pumping equipment, and in the plan there is also focus to connect to Nexus and food production. And this is just in a very, very cube. You can see the areas where we are going to conduct the training, and also the information from the internet. Please, next slide. Next, this is the same in the pink for the Dubai. Next. Next slide, please. And I am coming to present a successful project from my favorite area is from Gaza. Please go to next slide. We conducted as an application or practical implementation of the knowledges which we have been obtained from the training. It was really applied to the water and power supply project for Gaza. Gaza is very specific. It's the isolated island where is living approximately 3 million people. There are squeezed between the Israel, Egypt, and the sea, and they are getting power and water supply also from the neighboring countries, and they are very much related on this external power supply. So they have limited access to power, and direct relation to limited access to power is the limited access to water, because, and also from an ICRC point of view, also medical facilities. Next slide, please. So we have, I am talking about the situation 1.5 years ago, during the implementation of this project. So chronic electricity deficit. We conducted proper analysis of the situation. We created a GIS model of the Gaza, where all vulnerable points has been analyzed, and the best way was set up, and we call it the Gaza Resilience Program. Next slide, please. We connected into the specific net 51 water wells, and also we are trying to implement redundancy lines which are not depending on the power line, our present power lines. So we have dual, yes, we have dual. So I will be a little bit more focusing. So next slide. So we found out the best way how to implement this project, and together with the communities, together with the donor, we implemented the program, which is comprehensively resolving the water and power need. As a reaction from the local community is the local water and power companies that are receiving, because they are providing more stable product, they are receiving revenues, and revenues are used for operation and for the more employment of the local population. Next slide, please. Okay, there are, in one slide, I try to summarize the access, but besides the best or major improvement of the water and power supply, there are also benefits which are mention in the next slide, please. We reduce the usage of the generators. Thus, we reduce the environmental impact on the society and the climate. And this is, well, it's perfect. This is really giving the huge benefit to the affected population. So we have a huge reduction of the carbon, and we have a huge reduction of the using of the fuel. And because we have the hybrid project, we even produce the electricity surplus, which is injected into local grid. So this is a very good example how to implement the best knowledges in order to give some stability to vulnerable population. I would like to also mention on the end that sustainability is extremely important, and in the second project in the Lebanon, there is a lesson learned from the present situation that there is a huge focus on solar. A huge focus on solar is triggering also the environmental impact, which is related to, let's say, what to do with the obsolete parts of the solar systems, how to recycle them, and is triggering to focus on the top quality of the products. And this is in Cube what I just wanted to demonstrate a little bit different approach. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Peter. And just as a follow-on question, you mentioned that the Knowledge Hub that ICRC is working on, it's also potentially open to other partners. I just wanted to ask, how other partners may be able to get involved in that.
The partners in creation of the hub, partners are heavily involved because they are providing to us the laboratory equipment. And ICRC is providing payment for the lessons and lecturers. But without the partners, we will be talking, and our training is, let's say, based on the practical lessons and theoretical applications. So our partners, as I mentioned, Grundfos and Schneider, are really heavily involved, even financially, or providing related materials for this type of training. And is open, yeah? I just would like to suggest more that this training hub is anybody from humanitarian field, from the communities, can contact our ICRC representatives, and we'll get the details about the training and possibilities to participate.
Okay, that's great to have to know that resource is there. Yeah.
We're going to just try to get Lama online for 5 minutes.
Okay, great. And yeah, so I think we have Lama online, who's going to talk a bit about the work that NRC and NORCAP have been doing.
Yes, hello. I just want to check that you can see my screen. Can you? Yeah, I think you can. Sure.
I don't think we can.
At all? Okay. Maybe, yeah, I can start a little bit. So I'm really sorry for not being able to show the screen, but maybe while I'm talking, the IT can be fixed. So on behalf of NORCAP, who has been operating since 1991 under the Norwegian Refugee Council, operating basically from Oslo, we are considered the global providers of expertise, and we are called NRC Experts Deployment because we deploy energy experts in different thematic areas to different human agencies, Red Cross agencies, INGOs, and local authorities all across the world. In specific, we are talking about the Climate Action and Sustainable Responses Team, who was established in 2018, and now we are called the Green Shift Project, which I'm glad that a lot of our experts, around 30 experts, and our team are participating now in Kigali. So from the panelists, we have Anais, who already presented what she's doing with IOM, and many others. You can reach out to them during your stay in Kigali. So since 2018, in numbers, we have supported UN agencies with around 59 missions. We have in our roster over 40 experts. So by the end of 2022, we had around 52 experts. 37% of them are females, and we mainly work with 8 partners. UNHCR is the leading partner of hosting the highest number of energy experts, followed by WFP, IOM, GPA, NRC, FAO, UNICEF, and UN Habitat. Our main donor since the start of our project is NORAD, the Norwegian Development Agency, and we are also get some support also from the JAFFO. We are also starting funding under ECHO, SIDA, and we have a lot of funding coming also from different UN agencies. I'm hoping you can see also the slide. So if you can see, like, since 2018 until 2020, we have grown up a lot in spreading across most of Africa, because our project is covering Africa basically, and supporting some headquarters specifically in the GPA. We can see also from this slide, like, the spread of our experts. So we have a lot of regional missions, country-based missions, as well as global-based missions. We have recently started a mission with the NRC Middle East Regional Office to help them in greening their operations across the region. And from our side as NORCAP, we can see our main value is that the thematic resources, human resources that we are providing to the agencies, since we can see that there is a lack of energy expertise within different UN agencies. So we are providing support basically in solar technology, biogas production. You already saw Yugi's presentation from the morning, cooking solutions, and we also reforestation, information management as Anais now, energy finance, coordination as the police at the GPA, and we also supporting in site management and planning. You can see our experts like contributing a lot into many areas and sectors. We see from our side that we support the agencies with these thematic areas and human resources and so on. But we see that there is some efforts needs to be contributed and added to the expertise that we are providing. There is a main and key issue, which is like understanding and knowledge of the humanitarian context principles, because the majority of our experts coming from the private sector or academia, and they lack somehow the knowledge about the humanitarian concept. So there should be some more investments in this area, as well as we are relying on our partners as well to contribute and support us in order to build capabilities that can last for a longer term. Which also can feed into how to understand the partner's needs, so that experts can contribute in an effective and efficient way in supporting the mission deliverables that they are supporting, and build strategies and plans. From the other side, we see also there is a need to build expertise in fundraising, in grant management, which is somehow completely different than blended financing and innovative financing, because there we need to build somehow an investment to bring private partners or investors to come and support, rather than the grants scheme is to bring money to cover a specific project for a period of time. We also see there is a high need to start looking into e-waste management, which we started somehow with the GPA, and the GPA already started organizing a working group. We also worked in developing an e-waste management report, and we issued it early this year. From the end, also we see environmental protection is coming like as a high priority. So we see that there is a need, and agencies started to request for such experts. So we are looking forward to work more with our partners to develop these schemes in order to build better capacities and ensure a better community of practice and engagement into different levels. So this slide is just summarizing somehow the way of working and exactly the targeted groups, which are the partners that we are supporting, and so on. I will stop here due to the limited time, and thank you so much. Please raise any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Lama. It's great you could join us, and hopefully you can stick around for some questions as we open it up to the audience. Yeah, so any questions for our speakers on the stage or Lama online? Okay, we have a question at the front, Annie.
Yes, thank you so much. I have a question about the Sahel and the project that you've led. You defined or you explained how you characterize the profiles of the different displacement settings or the locations. I was curious to know to what level you also characterize the households within the sites. Like, so did you also do the kind of zoom and see, you know, in terms of socioeconomic, all of these preferences? And were you able to characterize these profiles, and what did you learn from this, and what's different or what's similar, and is it useful to go to this, you know, profile of the households in a site? So I'm just curious to know about your experience and if we can learn from that. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have another question? Thought I saw another hand. Thomas.
Thank you. I also have sometimes questions. Also to Maria and the Sahel study, Maria mentioned 2 points interesting, less on the data topic itself, but more on the content side. You mentioned you've done a bit of research around gender and energy in terms of electricity. Could you share a little bit of finding? Is this more towards street lighting? Or what were the findings you had? And the second one was around your ESCO service model. Why do you think an ownership by the government? First of all, the question: would the government also then pay for the system? And second, why do you think this is, for example, better than a model which is run by a private company, where the company owns the system?
Thank you. Maria, you're on the spot. You want to use this one?
No, yes, yeah, okay. So first question, characterizing the energy profile plus socioeconomic profile. Well, it was quite a challenge because, as I said, we did site visits in 70 settings, let's say, more than 5,000 interviews. So then you can collect data, but then you need to analyze the data, no? So, which is not so obvious sometimes. But we thought it was really, really needed because there were contexts where that we didn't know, and not a lot of information was taken. So we tried to complement household interviews also together with focus groups and triangulate a bit the information. So yes, we did interviews at household level. We took different aspects into consideration. At the beginning, we had, a survey of 100 pages. Then we realized that it was completely impossible. So after a lot of discussion with our local partners in each of the countries, we tried to adapt it to each of the settings. What did we learn? We learned that it's not it's not enough only to say, okay, this household needs this amount of electricity, of energy, if you want to call it like this, because it depends a lot. Here we have populations that are very vulnerable, that are moving all the time, some of them yes, some of them no, that are facing challenges related to conflict, stigmatization, and this I would link, for example, one of the questions that Thomas asked me. Yes, especially, for example, in some places in Nigeria, when we were discussing with women, we had to have a specific gender-focused groups, because women, of course, depending on who you talk to, you want to share some experiences, you want to not to share some experiences. And then we saw that it was, of course, linked to gender violence, linked to street lighting, because a lot of rapes being in place, etc., but also linked to violent groups, and how violent groups in specific places, like northeast of Nigeria, are also taking some girls and women, and well, I don't want to go deep into this because it's a tricky topic, but there is a lot to be taken into consideration. So it's not enough to say, okay, I just need this amount of electricity. You need to see, okay, what are the needs, what are the aspirations of these people? If you are going to provide the electricity, is he or she going to be there? Is going to be used by her family? Is going to be taken wherever? So this is what we, one of the biggest challenges that we learned. Of course, it's not perfect at all what we did. We try to compile it and share it, but again, this big amount of information, it's not easy to process. And also, it is true that, and this is it's personal opinion, it is true that in this kind of studies, there is some specific socioeconomic information that it's not value for some of the stakeholders. So we always say market-based approaches, and this socioeconomic information, it doesn't matter, because we just want to know, okay, how much energy, how much is going to cost. And I think one of the, I'm just expanding myself. One of the challenges that we need to do in terms of knowledge and skills is also to make sure that energy access actors also understand the challenges of working in humanitarian context with populations that are really vulnerable, that are facing huge traumas linked to conflict. And this is very important to take it into consideration when designing energy projects. Well, so this was the first question. First and second question regarding gender. We try to consider gender consideration. We try to integrate gender consideration, but it was not enough. I have to be very honest, because if you really want to go deep into this in places where women are so targeted by violence, by specific violence towards them, and I'm not talking about formal refugee camps, I'm talking about informal refugee camps in Nigeria, for example, or in the east of Chad, for example. You really need to have experts who really know about gender-based violence, who really know how to tackle this, and energy experts, as ourselves, as TTA, we are not the best on this. So you really need to partner with organizations, with healthcare workers, etc., who have the knowledge to address these issues, because it's not an easy topic. And so how to bridge the gap in between what information do I need to take and what, how can I take it? So in order not to create more vulnerability or more risk to this person, it's not an easy task. So I think there is a huge gap there, and we need to still working on that side. And regarding the business model, what we think it's better or not, we don't think it's better at all. What we did in this project is to propose different business models. And one of the biggest conclusions is that there is not one size fits all. The contexts are very different. The actors, the government actors, it's not the same. This Niger government is not treating IDPs or refugees as Nigerian government, for example, or Chad government. So the laws in place are not the same. Even in one country, one region, it differs a lot from another region. So what we saw is that, for example, in places which are more stable, more unstable security-wise, or where the government has taken much more commitment in order to take and to embrace the needs of forcibly displaced populations, why not to put this ESCO model and try? But we don't think it's the best or not. We think, okay, in this context, we should start with this and then see what happens.
Thank you. Okay, we have another question over here, and then I think we have one there as well. Oh.
So it sounds like a huge study, so congratulations on that in a particularly difficult area. Two points. One would be whether the data is available for other agencies to learn from, because that is a massive undertaking. So again, how do we sort of make use of what data is out there? And also, what collaboration was sought from, whether it be the UN integrated team in Dakar or others? So, because we've also been involved in a project in Sahel where we involved 24 different entities, and I haven't sort of really heard too much about this before. So I'd be interested in sort of see what linkages did you have with the UN team in Dakar, the Special Coordinator for Development, and how does this support the overall UN strategy for the Sahel? Thanks.
Okay, great. I had another question here and one over here. I'd like to take them together as the final questions, and then we'll hear from our speakers.
Hello, I'm Noor from NORCAP. So I just wanted to ask, what is the methods that you use to analyze the qualitative data, and especially in a timely manner when you have like limited project with like limited times, and which one of the methods that you find best to inform better programming? I also have a couple questions, and I just wanted to ask, what is the secondary data that you used to strengthen the data that was collected, the primary via the data collection, and what are the limitations that you found after you conducted this primary data collection? Thank you.
Great, thank you. The last question, and then we have maybe 1-2 minutes for you to respond, Maria. We had a question on this table?
Yes. Yeah, my name is Anne Nyambane. I'm with NOCAP. So my question goes to Peter regarding the hub that they have formed in collaboration with the University of Strathmore. And I was wondering, since Strathmore is a private university, I was wondering whether there is a modality that you've put in place so that students from public universities could actually, or how do you collaborate with the public university so that they can also benefit from the hub or the knowledge that is there already? Thank you.
Thank you.
This is under development. We would like to offer from the partner university possibilities to participate on the real projects from the field. It does mean that students or doctorate or advanced students can bring their knowledge, or they can participate in resolving real field project. So we are open, and it could be from any entity. And this is valid for both, for Nairobi and Dubai as well.
Thank you. And Maria, if you can, I know there was lots of questions for you there, just a final minute to respond to some of those.
Okay. Regarding if the data is available or not, not now because the projects are not finished. We hope we are going to finish it in the next couple of months. The idea is that then when they are finished, those are World Bank funded projects. So the idea is after there are going to be organized several regional workshops in order to share the data and to see what are the next steps. To complement this, the data that we use, it was also shared with the UNHCR country offices, and actually we got a lot of data from UNHCR geographical data that we also try to integrate in the research. But unfortunately, I cannot share it now because the projects are not finished, and we need to finish them in order to the World Bank to share the results. But the idea is to, of course, to share them, because this kind of data, I mean, if we don't share it, then we cannot act on them, on it. So this is one. And regarding the qualitative data and how we analyze this, I want to be very honest here. We are not a research organization, and it was a project with a timing limitation, etc., etc. The data that we have, we cannot say that it's representative. It's like we did this amount of communities, and that means that this is the situation in the Sahel. It's not, because we managed to go to the settings where we could. A lot of times we had to change several times of communities because they have been dismantled, because they have been an attack, because one of our local partners suffered kidnapping, well, several things. So it's not that it's representative or not, but at least we can say that it gave us enough information in order to make the energy profiles more or less as we think are needed in order to design the energy interventions. And there are a lot of limitations, but I don't think I have time, but we can discuss later if you want.
Okay, thank you. And yeah, just another round of applause for our speakers, and thank you for your questions. Okay, yeah, I think Thomas is just going to wrap up and maybe talk about next steps. For me, just to share, a couple of key takeaways. I think what we've heard, it's not just about quantitative data, it's that qualitative data. How can we take a gender lens? How do we involve the refugee organizations? And then how do we share that data? So thank you once again to all our speakers and audience, and over to you, Thomas.
Thank you. Thank you, Laura, for making my life easier, and I don't have to summarize it. Just another reminder, if you need a PCR test, free of charge, please go downstairs. They will close the center soon. So if you can, do it now. Otherwise, next session is about money. So if you're interested in money, in finance, come back at 3:25. Thanks a lot.